Good morning, everyone. I figured this morning I would finally record a video showcasing the masterpiece that is my master list of Elder Dragon Highlander decks spreadsheet, seeing as I've mentioned it many times in various social media posts and Discord chats and whatnot, but mostly in the form of screenshots. And I've never fully gone over the spreadsheet in a video form. I started this in 2011 when I started playing EDH to hold my first deck, and over the past 10 years it's simply grown and evolved, and I am reticent to provide copies of it to other people because I know how when you give someone something, they inevitably come asking you for support, and the dependencies of this file rely on a few very specific font files and a deprecated add-in for LibreOffice that allows me to fetch JSON data from Scryfall and parse it to get back pricing data for cards. So I am basically just going over the spreadsheet here so that all the people can see it and know how it works. The main reason why I started it is because at the time in 2011 I couldn't find any deck building sites that allowed me to store the type of data that I felt should be stored about my decks. For example, I could use any of the 2011 era deck building sites to specify that my deck had 8 islands from Ravnica City of Guilds. But I could never specify that I had 2 copies of island number 293, 2 copies of island 294, 2 copies of island 295, etc. And as someone who is as invested in the Vorthos side of Magic as I am, that just wasn't good enough. So I figured I could store my decks better locally than I could online. And as time evolved, I did implement exporting, where you can export deck lists from here into a format that can be pasted into online deck builders, which have greatly improved since 2011. And you can thus upload your decks online, but I still like to store them here. So this first sheet goes over how to enter mana symbols, and this part down in the corner you don't have to worry about. That's just when I was doing some calculations regarding how many of each dual land I would have to acquire in order to build all 32 decks. You need 8 of any specific dual land to fill out all 32 color identities, but at the time I didn't quite know that, and I was trying to figure it out, so I added some calculations here because this sheet doesn't really need to do anything other than showcase the mana symbols and how to enter them. This mana symbol font I'm using, I can't remember where I found it online. It was initially called Magic Symbols 2013 or something. I edited it in 2019, I think, to include the colorless symbol. I overwrote one of the symbols I wasn't using with the colorless symbol because the font didn't have the colorless symbol in it. So let's move on and move over to a deck list. This is Dysphoria Syndrome, my first ever deck. You'll see column A here has color-coded expansion symbols. I was looking at some of the Wizards paperwork that came with, I think it was the old 1-2 Punch pre-constructed deck I bought from Odyssey, and it had all of the old pre-constructed decks had a deck list with them, and the deck list always had the expansion symbol for the cards beside each card. And I thought that would be a neat thing to implement, and so I went looking online to see how, if at all, I could do that. This was much later than 2011, probably like 5 years ago. And I found the Kirun font from Andrew Gioia, I think is his name. So that is here. It uses a VLOOKUP to pull out of a lookup table what expansion symbol should be used based on what you have over in this column with the set. And then it uses conditional formatting. If we go to Format, Conditional, it uses a conditional formatting to format mythic rares as orange, rares as gold, uncommons as silver, anything with rarity S, the time spiral purple color for time shifted, and commons as black, of course, just like is on the printed cards. Now the colors, obviously they're not exact, but they're as close as I could get LibreOffice to do. So then we have the card's name, obviously, the type of the card. In this case, I've used General to represent the commander, and that comes into play during sorting because I want the deck list to have the General as the first card. So when I get further on, you'll see my custom sort order that I use for that. Then we have his subtype, his mana cost, obviously 2 blue-black, his converted mana cost, which is done by a custom macro. If we go over here to edit macros, master list, standard price macro, and we'll go here, CMC. So this just loops over the mana cost and adds the correct amount to the converted mana cost based on the characters. As you can see, for values higher than 9, it uses A, D, F, H, K, L, M, and N for the various higher than 9 numbers in the mana symbol font. Then we have the set he's from, Ravnica City of Guilds, his rarity. The collector number is only used in cases where you want to specify the specific collector number. I don't have to enter it in every column. Like you'll see here, High Tide is 18C for the collector number. That gets me the correct price for that printing of High Tide. We then have foil, which just tells you, obviously, is the card foil or not. Reserved is a neat column I added that uses a VLOOKUP on a table that contains the reserved list, so that it can tell me that, for example, Palancron is on the reserved list, and all these other cards above Palancron are not reserved. This is just helpful for when I'm still in the process of building a deck and entering it in here. I can note which cards are reserved, and then because reserved list cards obviously are never going to be reprinted, their price probably is never going to go down. So they should be the first cards I target to buy for the deck. The promo set code is for promos. For example, some promos in Scryfall have a specific promo set code. Like here, this is the pre-release foil Consuming Aberration. So his set code is promo Gatecrash, and it has to do with the price fetching, which we'll get to shortly here. Here's the category for various deck building sites if you want to categorize your cards. Some of the deck lists, the categories will be in like this, which is good for Architect, that kind of newer fangled stuff. And some of them are older style categories that I just haven't updated yet. The price is this complex, convoluted formula that I could probably do better with a macro. I had at one point implemented a macro that did scraping of HTML from MTG Goldfish, and it was a bad idea on my part, and a bad idea because it got my IP address limited with their website. I only ran it like twice, I think. But because it ran over 16 decks at 100 cards a deck, yeah, not a good idea. And the TCG player does offer an API to developers for various uses, but they wanted to see when you go to their FAQ about their API, they say, oh, we want what you're going to use it for and how you plan to make money off of that. And it wasn't appropriate for a project like this. But since Scryfall can easily output all their cards JSON data very easily and has prices on it, this just pulls from Scryfall now, and it's been working great ever since I did it. It's using the LibreOffice REST plugin, which is not... It says that the plugin is deprecated, and I haven't been able to find any new versions of the plugin, and it was actually quite difficult when I changed computers to get it working again. But it's this long concatenate formula that either uses the card's name, or if the collector number is present, it uses the set and the collector number to find the card, or if the promo set code is there, it uses that promo set code instead of the set code given by the name in the set column to find the card and find the price. This price of needed cards is for when a deck is incomplete. When a deck is incomplete, you use the needed column over here to indicate which cards you need, and that will put their prices into this column so that you can tell the prices and the total price of what is left for you to buy toward the deck. This SANP column is where if you have cards that have the Phyrexian mana in them, which we don't have any of in Dysphoria Syndrome here, this just shows their mana cost if you were to take the Phyrexian out of it and replace with the appropriate colored mana symbol, so that when I'm down at the bottom of the deck list and I'm counting the number of each colored mana symbol in the mana cost of cards in the deck, a blue Phyrexian mana would count toward the number of blue symbols in the deck, and same for a black or a red or a whatever Phyrexian. This color for Phyrexians column is if you had a Phyrexian card, like here, if I go and find a Phyrexian card, I think there's a Phyrexian card in not the Warlord games, but where was it? There's definitely a Phyrexian card in my wife's human deck, so let's go over to Excretius Albus here, my wife's Baird Steward of Argive deck. It has a Phyrexian card in it, in that it has Norn's Annex. Here we go. Norn's Annex is from New Phyrexia, and it has 2 Phyrexian as its mana cost. Over here, this color for Phyrexians tells you, in this case WW, tells you which mana symbols to replace the Phyrexian mana with. The reason why I did it with this is I had initially done the full color word here, but then I figured I know Wizards hasn't done it yet, and it's highly unlikely they will do it, but there could come a time in the future where Wizards prints, for example, a Dimir colored Phyrexian card that costs like 1 Phyrexian blue mana, Phyrexian black mana, and in that case I needed a way for it to, in the SANP column here, to replace the Phyrexian mana symbols with like differing colors of mana. So you'll notice that the deck list tabs across the bottom are colored dark for the 0 to 2 color combinations and light for the 3 to 5 color combinations, because we built these ones first and then we're just now starting on the upper 16 of the 32. So That's why they have different colors, and they're different colors depending on if they're my deck or my wife's deck. This curve CMC shows the count of all the CMCs for the various mana curve portions. And this here is part of a feature that doesn't work now. I'm not sure exactly why. I've asked around on some LibreOffice subreddits and whatnot, and I've been unable to figure out exactly why it stopped working. But it has to do with down here at the bottom of the sheet where we have mana curve. This used to auto-populate the commander's mana value in a different color in the graph, as it used to use the tab color of the sheet to populate all the other bars in the graph, and the sleeve color of the deck to populate the commander's mana value. And it worked the first time I implemented it, and then it stopped working. I did some tests, I changed the commander, the mana value of the commander, and it just stopped working. So I have no idea. So now I've been sort of manually color coding things when I input new decks. But you'll notice down at the bottom of the deck, it shows when the deck was last changed. That's a macro. That's a macro that does the set modified date. It just picks that one cell and puts the date in it. The other macro that we've seen thus far is the Defraxionized Macro, which takes the Phyrexian out of a mana cost and turns it into the proper colors that you want instead of the Phyrexian mana symbols. Then it shows here the total cost of the deck, the average cost of the deck, the highest card price, along with what card it is, in this case Cabal Coffers. I pulled mine out of a booster pack way back in the Torment days. The lowest price of the deck, the cost of the needed cards. It shows you how many colors the deck is. That is used in some calculations of where various cells would be for, I think, related to this feature here with the mana curve that doesn't work anymore. But then it shows you how many of each symbol you have. In this case, I have 53 blue mana symbols, 27 black mana symbols, 4 hybrid mana symbols, the percentage of mana symbols that are that. Then it does a count of the artifact, creature, enchantment, land, instant, sorcery, planeswalker, legendary, and tribal. The average converted mana cost. The color of the deck box. All of these decks are in Ultimate Guard boulders. The color of the sleeves, and the theme of the deck. So if we go over here, like to my Molech deck, you'll see that it has different. There's that same High Tide, Mystery Booster 1, Chaos Warp, and it comes out like this. The boulder color, the sleeve color. Oh, and it also, in decks that need them, it shows down here at the bottom. That's just manual. I haven't automated that in any way. It shows what tokens the deck would require. I thought the Warlord games had a Phyrexian card, but I guess not. Maybe that was something else. Anyways, this is Godo Bandit Warlord. This Don't Truffle With Me. This is my Thelen of Havenwood. And you can see that here's where you can see that the color of the commander's mana value isn't working, because obviously Thelen's mana value is 2. He costs green, and so he is. See, this is the old style categories from like Tapped Out and whatnot. And here, Eiley, but I won't go over all of the deck lists because that's just deck lists. But what I will go over now is the sorting. This sheet, each deck list is sorted by color and by mana cost. Now, you might ask, what do I mean by mana cost? I mean mana cost. I don't mean mana value. So what I have here is I have this sort list that sorts all the types of cards in a specific order that I wanted. General, companion, legendary creature, legendary enchantment creature, legendary artifact creature, legendary planeswalker, creature, artifact creature, enchantment creature, snow creature, legendary, blah, blah, blah. All the different types and combinations thereof that could be. And then it has a list that I compiled of all the mana costs in Magic. And I have to make a new, better list. I'm thinking I just want to do something programmatic to generate the list. But basically, for example, if we have this 1 and a white converted mana cost, obviously is less than white. But white-black, even though they both cost 2, white-black is more than white, right? Because black is further along in Wooburg. And of course, 1 white is less expensive than 2 and a black. Because even though they're both 3-cost cards, right? Here's a 3 and a white is cheaper than 2 white. So that was another thing that I couldn't find in any of the sites I was looking at that for deck storage that I really wanted was to be able to sort my list by mana cost, not by mana value. Or as we used to call it, converted mana cost. But yeah, so then that's all like 1 and 2 color decks here. Here's the first, obviously, 3 color deck. It doesn't have a mana curve graph in it yet. I haven't added that here. I really should. It's the latest deck I completed, so obviously it's a little bit off. Now you'll notice my wife's decks are different colored. These 2 decks here are retired decks. We used to have her old Risk the Redeemed deck, which this sheet doesn't connect to any of the stuff really good anymore because it's old and deprecated, and I could probably just delete the list. Same with this Demon Rakdos deck that was mine that I built, even though Rakdos was a color combination assigned to her. I built this as like a dual decks partner to her Gisela Blade of Gold Knight Angel Tribal deck. But let's move on from deck lists because I've spoken long enough about the deck lists in the file. So we have this completion sheet here. It was just mostly for when I was in progress of entering the decks into the sheet. It tells me that everything is 100% complete or how complete it is. For some reason this thing here should be green, but it's not. But whatever. I mean, this is not a sheet you really use anymore. It was mostly when I was first entering all 16 of the 0 to 2 color decks from, taking the actual cards and going through and entering them into the sheet. I wanted to make sure that I had the cards all in properly and named and everything. Here's a staples thing that I've added recently that I was working on that it looks through the deck lists for various staples that might exist in EDH that you would want to have in every deck kind of thing, and shows you if the deck has it or not. Like here we are, it shows that there's a Sol Ring in every deck and a Ghost Quarter in most of them, and Rhystic Study is in Man Out of Bounds and Draconis Ad Athreus and Dysphoria Syndrome and Mortem Submari, and Cyclonic Rift is, just so that I could say, okay, yeah, I have the staples and here's where they are. This is the key rune lookup sheet. This is what gets the mana symbols put in that column A. It takes the various Unicode numbers for the characters of the font, and it see the unichar of C1. Here's the hex value for it, the decimal value for that, and then the unichar value of that, and then the set name, and it's a big VLOOKUP table where I can look up the various set codes for the symbols, and it'll convert a set name into a symbol. The only thing is, I think the key rune font is currently missing Kaldheim Commander. So with that being missing, I kind of had to cheat, and the one Kaldheim Commander card that I've put into a deck, I had to label as Kaldheim to get the set symbol, and then use the collector number and promo set code searching to get the price. But that, I assume, will be fixed in a later revision of the key rune font. This is the set code lookup. This uses the set name to look up the 3-letter set code of any given set. These other columns over here are just kind of unused. They were from when I pasted some data in from online. As you can see, the sheet is sort of cobbled together and spaghetti code and whatnot, so it's not the greatest in terms of some of the things that have gone unfixed over the years, but it does what it needs to do. This is the web output. You input what deck you want in here, like for example, Dysphoria Syndrome, which I named that deck after the syndrome experienced by the crew of USS Voyager in the Season 7 2-part episode Workforce, where they were all kidnapped and sent to a planet and then made to work in various factories and other jobs with their memories erased. And when they started remembering their previous life, the doctor in the hospital who was behind the kidnappings of the crew told all of the nurses that they had dysphoria syndrome, which was a very rare syndrome, and it would cause people to remember things that weren't real, and that they had to have their memories re-erased, and I felt it was a good name for a mill deck. But if I put that in here and I tell it tapped out, but really this is now set up more for like Architect and Mox Field and that kind of stuff, even though I haven't changed the name from tapped out, I just leave that as is. It'll give me here is the deck list on the left, split out into the various columns, and then on the right those columns get concatenated together into something where you can just paste this into Architect, and Bob's your uncle if you haven't made any spelling mistakes or typos in anything. And really, you would notice if you'd made spelling mistakes or typos on the deck list sheet, because the price fetching won't work. The needed cards here, this is just for decks that have needed cards. I don't think there are any in here right now, but let's go Esper, maybe? And then go Data, Refresh Range. Okay, yeah, that's giving me a whole bunch of errors, but probably, that's why. Esper is in the deck name. Alila is what we call it. Yes. So see, this shows, now if I go Data, Refresh Range, this shows me all the cards that are in the Alila deck that are marked as cards we need. So it says we need Demir Signet, Talisman of Progress, Adakar Waste, Underground River, Mystic Gate, Sea of Clouds, Morphic Pool, Vault of Champions, and Hall of Heliod's Generosity. And if you look at the Alila deck, it's pretty much, we're in progress of building it. It's not fully populated yet, so there would be more if that was the case, if it was fully finished. This reserved list sheet just contains the names of all the cards that are on the reserved list, and the lookup looks up in this sheet to tell me if things are reserved. This book text output deprecated sheet, that's from a different project I was working on, where it would output appropriate text for an HTML file I had developed in my testing of the using of Scryfall JSON, where it would show 3x3 squares, like 9 pocket binder pages, of images of the cards for a given deck, but I threw away that project and decided that it wasn't really worth it to have in here. But I didn't want to take out this sheet, which was modeled after set code lookup, in case I ever wanted to go back to that project. So for now, it's here, but it's not used. So yeah, that's the sheet. We also, I'm not sure if I went into these other. Let's look over these other macros and just see here what I didn't talk about, just in case. So this is the original price fetching macro. You'll notice that it has a thing called blocked true and a big if statement around it that says if not blocked. And it tried to do TCG player for a bit, and then there was goldfish, and it's not worth it. I can delete that out of there if I really wanted to, but I've left it in there because it was my first experience with LibreOffice macros, and sentimental value, I guess. The set modified date we talked about, CMC we talked about, Defraxionized we talked about, BG color. This just gets the background color of a given cell, and it uses an optional volatile parameter such as rand to force the function to recalculate every change to the sheet, because I was having some issues with it. It's to do with that automated commander mana value for the mana curve graph coloring, which doesn't seem to work now for whatever reason. I have no idea why. And the tab color function is not related to these macros. These macros return the appropriate colors. It's related to something in here in the graph itself. I've got oops, not the data point. No, the chart maybe. Format axis, I think it is. No. Oh yeah, format data series. Here we go. C is supposed to have, there's the color for it, but it's supposed, there was somewhere where I could enter in under the data ranges. Here we go. So you can enter the fill color for the data ranges in here, and so that's U2 to U18. So let's go up to U2 to U18. See, that's here, and you'll notice that 4 is in fact different from all the others, but yet if I changed Circu's converted mana cost, let's say he was really bad and he cost 6. Now, or 7 actually, now that difference is at 7, but if we look back down here, it still shows up as 4. The first time I ran this feature of the deck list sheet, it changed properly when I did that. But the only things I've been able to find in Reddit and other various searches is that I should be able to input exactly what I did into the chart there, and it should be able to pull the color of each data point from that list of data points that are from that list of data point colors that I've given it over here in this column. So I have no idea about that. If any of you are super skilled with LibreOffice charts and you know more about that color feature for the data series and you know why it's not working for me anymore, do please let me know, because things like the Warlord games and whatnot would really like to and especially Don't Truffle with Me and Children of Menkani, pardon me, and all my other decks would really like to know why that doesn't work anymore. But yeah, so that is the sheet, and that is the story of its existence, why it exists, and sort of how it works. If you have any questions, feel free to ask, but like I say, I can't really see myself giving copies of the sheet to anybody, just because of the nature of the dependencies and all the spaghetti code contained herein that I could probably improve upon. And it's like when you're the IT guy of the family, like I am, everybody among your family and friends says, "Hey, my computer's not working, can you help me with it?" And there's not enough time between my full-time job duties and my fatherhood duties and my adult responsibilities to be helping 5,000 people who have copies of this sheet who are like, "I don't understand. I changed something and now it doesn't work." So I'm keeping it for myself, but here it is. Anyways, I've gotten off work just before this, so I'm going to go to bed. It's the end of my day and I'm going to go to bed. Have a good day.